What's up guys, this is Eric Vasquez here with a brand new tutorial for you from Design Cuts. Today we're going to be working with the all-new Totally Artistic Vector Supply Kit bundle. Now this one is full of a lot of great vectors from some of the top vector artists from around the world. You guys will find tons of illustrations, textures, and even some really cool fonts to work with. So in this tutorial we'll be using just a few of those to give you guys a little taste of what you can expect to find inside. Now for this tutorial today, we're going to be creating a barbershop flyer design in Adobe Illustrator. So this tutorial will be focused on using Illustrator. So the first thing you want to do here is open up Illustrator and then come over here and create a new document. And if you don't see this window automatically, you just have to go ahead and click New on this screen behind me right here. And then you'll be brought into this dialog box. So it's kind of similar to when you want to create a new document in Photoshop, and you guys will see a lot of similarities. If you are familiar with Illustrator, then you probably know about a lot of this already. So the first thing we're going to do here is just give our file a name. I'm going to go ahead and call this Blades of Glory Barbershop Flyer Design. Now, of course, you guys don't have to use that exact name. You can use something shorter, but I'm just using this because I like to have, very descriptive and clear titles. So from here, what we want to do is make sure that we're working in inches. So I'm going to click on this menu here, change it from pixels to inches, and then change the width to 7 inches and the height to 5 inches. And we want to make sure that the orientation is actually set to landscape. So just check that over here and make sure that it's on landscape instead of portrait mode, because we're going to be creating a wide flyer. Now also make sure that you just have one artboard. That's really all we need. And check that your color mode is RGB color, and then go ahead and hit create. So now we have our new document, and you'll see up here in the tab that it has that name that we've applied. So the first thing that we want to do here is bring up our layers palette. If you guys don't see this, it's usually somewhere over here on the left, and I'm basically just kind of dragging it over here now because you can dock it. Now once it's in the dock, it kind of looks like these two diamond shapes stacked on top of each other. Now if you guys don't see the layers palette when you fire up Illustrator, there's a couple of ways you can bring it up. The easiest way is to go to the window menu and choose layers. Or if you wanted to use the keyboard shortcut, you would use the function key and F7 on the keyboard, and that's going to bring up your layers palette. So you'll see right here that we only have one layer, layer 1. And I actually want to rename this. So I'm going to double click on layer 1, and I'm just going to type out background in all caps. From here, you can either press M on the keyboard or just come over to your toolbar and select the rectangle tool. Now as I just hover my cursor over it for a second, you can see that it pops up with the name of the tool, and then it actually shows you that keyboard shortcut. So that's kind of handy if you're in a pinch. Just go ahead and press M, and you'll now have that tool selected. What we want to do from here is double click on our canvas, and that's going to bring up this panel, which allows us to determine and set the size of the rectangle that we're about to create. So for this, I'm going to make it the exact same size as my document. So I'll do 7 inches wide, press Tab, and then enter a value of 5 inches for the height, and then go ahead and hit OK. Now I need to switch to a different tool, so I'm going to grab my selection tool, or you can press the letter V on the keyboard, and again you'll see that shortcut right there when I hover over the tool. What I want to do now is kind of line this up so that it fits exactly on my canvas or my artboard in the background here. And by default, we actually have a solid white fill color with a black outline, and you can see that over here. Again, this looks a little bit similar to how it's laid out in Photoshop, except instead of a foreground and background color, we have a fill color and a stroke color. And if you need to toggle between these two, you can just press X on the keyboard. So we are actually going to do that. I'm going to press X to bring my stroke to the foreground, and then click on this little box just below. That's a white box with a red strike through it to make that none. So now it's just a solid white box. And now I can double click on this fill color, and we're actually going to change the value of that color. So come down here to where the hex value is and enter the value 243349, and then go ahead and hit OK. And we now have this kind of grayish navy blue rectangle for our background. Okay, so from here we can actually bring in our first element. And I'm going to start by bringing in some really cool vector buildings from Darumo shop, which look really great, and they're going to be a lot of fun for this tutorial. So I'm going to navigate to that really quickly. I just want to show you guys really quick, since we are working in Illustrator. I've saved out all these EPS files in different versions of Illustrator because I know not everybody has Creative Cloud version or CS6. So you'll find a few versions of every vector that you're going to need for this tutorial, including EPS 8, which is, going back pretty far. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys will be able to follow along with this tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and open Vector Building CC because that's the version of Illustrator I'm using, but just open up whichever version you need here. All right, so let's pop this open for a second, and you can see that we've got some pretty cool and fun looking buildings here. Now, I actually customized this a little bit to make one of these buildings into the barber shop, and I used the same fonts that we're going to be using later on. Now, there's a lot of cool vector buildings in here, and you guys can totally customize the scene, but for this tutorial, we are just going to be using this setup right here, and everything is grouped, so just grab your selection tool up here in the toolbar or press V, click on it, and now we're just going to copy it. Press Command C and Command W to close out of this window. Now, once you're back here in your main document, let's go ahead to our Layers panel and click on this icon to create a new layer. Now, what we're going to do is press Command V to paste it. Okay, so we now have our buildings on Layer 2. Double click on the Layer 2 text over here in your Layers palette, and let's just go ahead and rename this Vector Buildings. Okay, again, very just obvious and clear what this layer contains. Now I'm going to use my arrows to just kind of move this down here to the bottom to make sure that it's completely filled and there's no gap here. And I'm also going to maybe just crop this a little bit so the tree goes off of the artboard on the right side and so that our building goes off on the left side just a bit. I'm actually going to use this line in the shadow here as kind of a rule and a place where I'm going to crop this and cut this off. Okay, so as you can see, if you need to move around your document like this, like I'm doing, all I'm doing is holding the space bar and you'll get the hand tool. And from there, you can just click and drag to kind of move around your document. So if you're zoomed in really far, it's a really great way to just be able to see what you're doing. Okay, and of course, you can always press Command 0 to fit your document to your screen, Command and the minus key to zoom out, or Command and the plus to zoom in. So now that we have our buildings in here, I'm going to click and select this navy gray background rectangle that we created before. I'm going to press Command C to copy it and then click off of it for a second, okay, just to deselect that shape. Now I'm going to select the Vector Buildings layer and press Command F to paste that in front. So now you can see that this shape is on top of our buildings. And we're actually going to use this shape as a mask because we don't want to see the part of the building or the tree or the ground that goes outside of our artboard. So to do that, hold the Shift key while this main shape is still selected, and then click on the buildings. And now from here, what you want to do is come up to the Object menu, come all the way down, and choose Clipping Mask Make. And you'll see there that the keyboard shortcut for that is Command 7. So that's just a handy little shortcut in order to do that too. And now you guys can see that the buildings are only visible inside of this artboard area that we've established with our background shape. So that's just a handy little way to kind of crop things. Okay, so what we want to do now is actually create another new layer, layer 3, and I'm going to double click it and just call this layer color in all caps, and then press Command F to paste another copy on top of this layer. Now we'll come up to the window menu for a second, and we now want to open the transparency panel. So you'll see here it says normal, and these are actually our blending modes, very similar to Photoshop again. And we're going to change this from normal to color, and that kind of applies this bluish tone over the entire image here. So now I'll press Command F to paste another copy. This time change the blending mode from normal to overlay. And let's go ahead and drop the opacity down here to about 30%. Okay, that's just going to give us a little bit more contrast. Now I'll press Command F one more time to paste a third copy here and change the blending mode from normal to multiply. Now when I do that, you can see it gets super dark, so we're going to drop the opacity from 100 to about 45% and then just press Enter. So we've now applied this bluish tone over our whole image, and it looks pretty good. It's kind of, subdued. It doesn't stand out too much, which is great. That's exactly what we want. All right, so we've now kind of established a couple of layers here and basically set up our background for our flyer design. So let's go back to the freebies folder for this tutorial, and I'm now going to open up one of these other freebie files here. And I think the one that I want is actually from Andimaginary Creative Co, who has a ton of great stuff in here. They have the Handmade Document Creator Kit, which we were lucky enough to get our hands on and check out some of these really cool shapes that we're going to be using here. So again, as I mentioned before, you'll see that it looks like a lot of different EPS and vector files here, but it's really just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different shapes from the Andimaginary Creative Co pack. Okay, so the one that we're going to be working with first is the Rectangle 56 EPS file. Now again, just open up whichever version you need for your version of Illustrator, and then it should look like this. Okay, so we've got our cool hand-drawn rectangle that has like a nice border around it, and this is actually going to serve as the base for our logo design. So let's go back for a second to the freebies folder, and we're now going to add some outlined text using one of the really cool fonts from Retro Supply Co. And we're going to look for the EPS file called Blades of Gold. This is going to serve as the name of our barbershop. Now this text, like all the text and shapes here, are outlined in Illustrator, which means that they are not editable. Of course, if you want the full live versions of the type, you'll have to buy the bundle, but for now you guys can get a preview of what this looks like. It's a really cool, kind of antique and old school looking font called Roycroft, and there is a regular version that we're using here, as well as a distressed version available that has a bit of grunge to it, which is really cool. So I'm just going to select this. You can either click on it with the selection tool, or press Command A to select all, and then Command C to copy it, and Command W to close out of that tab. Now back over here in your rectangle EPS file, press Command V to paste the text. Now from here what we're going to do is just use the selection tool to kind of move this up here towards the left, and then hold Shift and drag downwards from the bottom right corner of the bounding box to make that a bit larger so that it fits nicely across and spans almost the entire width of that rectangle. Now from here, let's go back to our freebies folder again, and this time open up the Barbershop EPS file. This is going to serve as our tagline or subhead for our logo. Again, you can click and drag around it, or press Command A to select all, then Command C to copy it, Command W to close it, and Command V to paste that text in here. Now again, what we want to do is hold the Shift key and just scale this up a bit by dragging outwards from any of the four corners of the bounding box until it sits nicely below our Blades of Gold text. It doesn't have to be the same size. In fact, it should be a little bit smaller because in terms of visual hierarchy, the Blades of Gold is the most important part. Okay, and that's always important in any kind of design, is to consider the visual hierarchy and what things are the most important. So now we're actually going to go back to the freebie folder and we're going to add some other elements here. What we want to do is open up the Lines 43 EPS file, and then once we have this open, we can copy it and bring it into our logo file. So press Command A, Command C, Command W, and then Command V to paste it. And we actually want to spread these two things apart, but right now they are grouped together. So a quick way to fix that is to come up to the Object menu and choose Ungroup. Now, once you do that and you use your selection tool, it's actually ungrouped even the lines in each side of these shapes here. So we need to regroup these. I'm going to click and drag around these three, press Command G, and then click and drag around these three and press Command G, and that's just a shortcut to group them. So now I can select any of these three lines and it'll grab the entire group. The main thing is we just wanted to separate the left and the right. So hold the Shift key and select both of these, and then move them up so they're kind of on either side of the barbershop text. Hold the Shift key and just make it a little bit smaller, and I'm just going to drag it over here to position it where I want it. And now for this one on the right side, I'm going to click, hold the Shift key, and drag over to the right. Now holding the Shift key just ensures that it kind of stays in alignment, because if I let go of it, I'm all over the place and it's really hard to line up. Okay, so we're looking for something like that. Now, of course, you can select either the left or the right side independently and move them around even more if you wish. And you can just do that using the arrow keys if you just want kind of small, subtle movements. Now what I'm going to do is click and drag around this entire bottom line here, both of these lines and the barbershop text, and press Command G. So now this entire bar down here is one shape altogether. Now let's click and drag around the entire shape here, which is our Blades of Gold barbershop logo. And once you do that, you should see all of these alignment tools on the top, kind of in this toolbar up here. And what we want to do is select the second one in, which is called Horizontal Align Center. And that's just going to make sure that everything is nice and centered. And then while that's all still selected, press Command G to group it together. So we now have our logo. So I'm going to select all, or click and drag around the group, press Command C to copy it, and come back over here into my main document, create a new layer, double click on layer 4 and change it to logo in all caps, and then press Command V to paste the logo. So it's a bit large right now, so what we're going to do is hold the Shift key and drag inwards from any of the 4 corners here, and I'm just going to move it up a bit as well. So hold the Shift key and just slide this up, leave a little bit of room at the top because we're going to be adding a few more elements, but somewhere around there looks pretty good. Now from here what we want to do is actually change the color, because black on this kind of darker blue background doesn't really work that well. And you'll also notice that these bars on the side are a slightly different color, so we want this to all be uniform and one color. So using your selection tool, go ahead and click on the logo, and then you'll see now that your fill color is showing a question mark. That's because there are more than one colors in this group. So you can double click on that and we can fix that right now. So the way we're going to fix that is by double clicking on the question mark and entering a hex value of DBC075, which is this nice gold color. Now we have our logo and it's all one color. So from here what we can do is continue adding to this and building upon our logo. So I'm going to come back to the freebies folder, and then we'll go back to the Andimaginary Creative Co and some of their awesome elements here. And the one that we're going to be working with now is Flag 21 EPS. Let's pop that open in Illustrator, and then we're going to select all, Command A, Command C to copy it, Command W to close out. And now I'm going to pull up my layers palette again. So if you remember, the keyboard shortcut is the function key and F7 on the keyboard. And I'm going to create a new layer just above the logo layer. Double click and we'll call this one Flag. And then press Command V to paste this shape. Now I'm going to drag this up here, roughly in the center above my logo. Press I on the keyboard to get my eyedropper tool, and then click on the gold so that I can sample that color. But now we want to add some text inside of this ribbon. So what we're going to do is come back over here, and I know we're jumping around a lot into these folders, but there's a lot of vector elements here that we're going to be working with. So now we'll grab the presenting text, which again is created, it's an outlined version of the Cosmopolitan font from Retro Supply Co. So it's a really cool font. This one has a lot of character to it. So I'm going to copy it, close out here, and this font just works really well with the Roycroft font. It's the same font that we used for the barbershop text, so we're just going to try and keep it in the same family. And I'm a firm believer that, most designs shouldn't really use any more than 3 or 4 different fonts tops, unless you're doing something like a typographic poster or something like that. So what we want to do now is select our outline text and double click on the fill color so that we can change it. We're going to change it from black to a dark blue color. So I'm going to enter the hex value 061326 and then press OK. And now it's not a huge difference because it's still a pretty dark color, but it should match the background. Come back to the freebies folder, and this time we're going to grab lines 42. So once you have this file open, we're going to select it, copy it, close the tab by pressing Command W, and then on the same flag layer we're going to paste it by pressing Command V. Now I'll zoom in a little bit, and I'm just going to drag this up here using the spacebar to grab my hand tool to navigate around the document. Now again, I'm going to press I on the keyboard and sample some of this gold color, select the shape, and then hold Shift and drag down a bit just to make that smaller. Now what I want to do is kind of place it roughly in the center of this flag here, or this ribbon, and I'm going to make a few copies of it. So I could copy it and paste it, or another way to do this is to hold the Alt, Option, and Shift keys, and then click on the shape and drag it over to the left. And that's going to create a copy directly next to our original. So let's do that one more time, just so we have 3 of these all in a row right next to one another. Now what I'm going to do is select the first shape, hold Shift, and then select the other 2. So all 3 are selected at the same time, and then press Command G to group them together. Now I can select any of these and it'll grab the whole group. So again, let's hold the Alt, Option, and Shift keys and now drag this entire group over to the other side. So you should now have 3 of these on the left and 3 of these on the right. So you end up with something like this. Now I want to make sure that this text is centered inside the ribbon here, so I'm going to click on it with the selection tool, hold Shift, and then select the flag behind it, and once again come up here to the Align tools and choose Horizontal Align Center. So while both of these shapes are still selected, I can hold the Shift key and select the 3 illustrated circles on the left, and then grab the 3 on the right, and press Command G to group those together. Now let's zoom out by pressing Command and the minus key, and I can click to grab this whole group, hold Shift, and now select my entire logo, and once again center those things horizontally in the center. Alright, so we now have our flag and we have our logo in place. So let's come back to our freebie folder for a moment here. What I want to do now is grab another EPS file. This time we're looking for special offers. That EPS file, we should pop that open in Illustrator, click and drag around it, copy it, close it, and now we're going to create another new layer. So let's go ahead, make a new layer, and change the name of it to Special Offers, and we can just click and drag this below our logo layer. Now press Command V to paste that text in here, and this time we'll double click on the fill color, and we're going to change this to another color. It's going to be a light blue. So enter a hex value of 3A, 5B, 7C, and then hit OK. And we'll now have that text in here below our logo. Okay, so we're going to continue adding a few more text elements here using these same couple of fonts. But before we do that, I actually want to add a cool barbershop element to this. So again, one part of this awesome vector bundle that you guys will find are some really cool barbershop elements called AVVS Barber from Unember. So these are some really cool graphics, and we're going to be using one right now. So go ahead and open up the Shears EPS file in Illustrator, and you'll see this really nice kind of old school etched illustration. So I'm going to press Command A to select all, Command C to copy it, Command W to close out, and now make another new layer between the special offers and logo layer. All right, and we'll double click on this one and just call it Shears, and then press Command V to paste it. Now for the color here, I actually want to use the same color that we used for this special offers text. So instead of entering the hex value all over again, I'm simply going to press I on the keyboard, click on that blue, and now I'll have that same color. So as for the position, I'm going to place this up here so that it goes behind our logo, and it creates this nice cool kind of like overprint effect. So from here I'm going to come back to the freebie folder, and I want to grab the header 16 EPS file, open that here in Illustrator, and we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to select all, copy it, close it, and now create another new layer. This one should be below the special offers layer, and we're going to call this one Services. Okay, then press Command V to paste that shape in here. Press I on the keyboard to get the eyedropper tool and sample some of that gold color. Then let's add the text. As you might have guessed, we're going to grab the Services EPS file, select it, copy it, close it, paste it right in here, and we're going to place it on top of this gold header. Now for the color, I'm going to press I to get the eyedropper tool and just sample that dark navy color from up here in the flag. Now there's a third piece here that we're going to add below this services header, and this text is going to be the services list EPS file. Alright, so this is essentially exactly what it sounds like. It's a list of the services that are offered by this barbershop. So again, let's copy it, bring it over here, paste it onto the services layer, and just move it down here below. Alright, and now I'm going to press I to get the eyedropper tool and sample that same light blue color, so you end up with something like this. Now what I want to do is just quickly align a few things. So I'm going to select the services text, hold Shift and select the gold header behind it, and then once again come up here to the Align tools and choose Horizontal Align Center. Now I can press Command G to group this together, and hold Shift and select the services list below, and then align those two things together. Now if I didn't first group these two things together, it still probably would have worked. Let me just ungroup that really quickly by pressing Command Shift G, and we can see what happens if I just select all three of these things independently, but it actually ungrouped my list here as well. So now I can actually just do the same thing, horizontal align, and everything is looking good. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is click on this gold header here, press Command C to copy it, create a new layer, double click, and change this one to Hours. Now I'll press Command F to paste it in front, and hold the Shift key and just tap the right arrow over a few times until it's to the right of this list. Now we'll come back to the freebie folder, and for this one we're going to open the Hours EPS file, And we're going to do the same thing. Select all, copy it, close it. Make sure you're on the hours layer here and then press Command V. Now I can tell already that this gold header is still on the services layer. So all I'm going to do is select it, press Command X to cut it, select the hours layer, and press Command F. Now you can tell right away that it just covered up our text, so how can we fix that? Well, there's a couple things you can do. The easiest way is to press Command and the left bracket to send this shape back one step. Another way you could have done that is by going up to the Object menu and choosing Arrange, Send Backward, and you'll see that keyboard shortcut right there. Okay, so once you've done that, we want to make sure that the hours text is the same navy blue color. So select it. So select the text, press I, and then click on the services text to sample that color. And we have a lot of extra space here, so I actually just want to make this a little bit smaller so that it's cropped closer to the edge of our text. So I'm going to select this shape, move my selection tool over the bounding box on the right side, and just drag it in a little bit like that. Very easy, very straightforward. Now from here we'll go back to our freebie folder, and this time grab the hours list EPS file. Just like we had the list of services, we now have the list of hours. Select all, Command A, copy it, Command C, close it, Command W. Now on that same layer, press Command V to paste it, and I'm just going to move it down here, press I on the keyboard to get my eyedropper tool, and now I can sample that same light blue color. So select the hours list here, hold the Shift key, select the header, and then select the outlined header text, and now come up to the Align tools and choose Horizontal Align Center. So now all of those things are nice and centered. So from here what we want to do is press Command G to group these three things together, and let's go ahead and just do the same thing with our services. Select the background, hold Shift and click on the outlined header text, and now continue and proceed to select each of these items below, and then press Command G to group it, or come up to the Object menu and choose Group. So we've now got our list of services and our list of hours grouped together on separate layers. Alright, so what I want to do now is click on this hours list, hold Shift and select the services at the same time. And I'm just going to tap this over a bit to the right to give myself a little bit of space and to try and center it pretty visually here. So I'm going to return to my freebies folder, and this time I'm going to select the address EPS file. Now this is kind of the final piece here, because what good is having a flyer for a barbershop if nobody knows where it is or how they can get in touch with you? So I'm going to select all of this, and again this is created using the Roycroft font from the full bundle. I'm going to copy it, close out, and now create another new layer just above the color layer but below services. This one I will double click and rename address, and then press Command V to paste this in here. And now I'll grab my eyedropper tool and sample any of the gold from the document. So we've now got our address in here as well with everything else. So at this point, you can select some of these different elements, hold the Shift key, grab the special offers text, the logo, the shears, and even the flag up top, and then let's center all of those things horizontally. All right, so this is our complete Blades of Gold barbershop flyer design that we created from scratch in Adobe Illustrator using just a handful of these totally awesome illustrations and elements from the Totally Artistic Vector Supply Kit. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. I know it's been a little bit different because we have been working all in Illustrator, but these vectors will really add a lot to your work. You can absolutely combine them with Photoshop if you wish, but for this tutorial I just wanted to show you guys how some of these elements can work together to create a truly fun and unique design. Once again, this is Eric Vasquez here for Design Cuts. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, let us know in the comments below if you enjoyed the tutorial, and feel free to share any of the work that you guys worked on using this bundle or even your own results from this tutorial. Thanks again, and we'll see you guys next time.